This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Hi everyone, this is the City Council Ordinance meeting for August 21st, 2025. Thank you for coming. We have some folks online as well as our counselors are all in person. Tonight we're going to once again to bring Councilor Kwasinski up to speed on the work that's been done for the short-term rental ordinance. We'll talk about that. And then also there's a ordinance regarding the moratorium on sewage sludge. Councilor Kwasinski has brought us a draft of that, so we will talk about that as well. But for now, I'm going to open it up for public speak. Is there anybody here who has anything that they would like to say regarding anything that's not on the agenda or not on the agenda at this point? I'm gonna take that as a note. We also have, I just want to make sure that we could get to folks if they had to leave. We also have some meeting minutes that need to be approved. Did you want to remind the council which ones those were?
From April 1st,
Yep.
April 14th. I think the one that I need to go back to record is the April 28th because I wasn't there. And then there's
a July 17th, but that wasn't attached. So maybe we could do the April 1st
and June 9th.
Okay. So it was April 1st,
April 1st, April 14th,
and June 9th.
June 9th.
Great. So I'll make a motion to approve those.
Second motion.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
And abstentions, great. So we have one abstention. And great, thank you. So coming back to the short-term rental ordinance, I did share this with Councilor Kwasinski. I'm trying to think of how to move forward with this. Councilor Kwasinski, do you have any questions regarding the short-term? So maybe we could start there and
Only all of it.
yeah.
Bring me up to speed.
So that might be
You guys have done a lot of work.
yeah.
Back and forth.
Mhm. Okay.
Back on you, sorry.
Okay. Were there any questions that you did have regarding?
Nothing specific. I just wanted to be sure that we addressed certainly the issues with all the various inspection departments, but I presume that's all been fleshed out, dealt with.
Yep. So what we have in here, and actually that's why Ryan is here, because I chatted with him also about the home inspection that the Board of Health would also do. And so if you want to chat about that, that might be because it is kind of new to the process. And so is that something that you would like to kind of discuss in terms of?
Yeah, so definitely for the short-term rentals, I would be very comfortable with a yearly inspection being required by the Board of Health annually. My only concern is, would it have to be on perfect would have to be a perfect, housing inspection for them to be allowed to do a short-term rental. If there was a minor violation, would they still be allowed to do would they still be eligible for a short-term rental? Because we can go into any house and find a violation. So I'm just wondering, what's the criteria?
Uh-huh.
I guess I think we would probably determine that, like 30 days to cure,
Okay,
something, something like that.
Right.
and then what I've seen most cities do is it's a free re-inspection, and then following that, there's a fee for every follow-up inspection.
When you say minor things,
That's
A missing screen in a window.
Rips.
in the rental portion of the unit, we're not talking about the rest of the residents, are we?
I mean, ideally, I would inspect the entire residence apart from the non-rental portion, so the kitchen, bathroom, the rented out bedroom.
But if it was, so say it was a duplex, you would only inspect the unit that is rented
Yes,
versus.
Let's say it was, imagining it like a kitchenette type situation.
Mhm.
Where you have small little cooking areas, it could be a studio.
like an in-law apartment.
Or
in-law suite.
one or two room in-law
Mhm.
type situation. That had separate entrances or separate entrances.
Mhm.
And wasn't occupying or using any part of the rest of the structure. Obviously you wouldn't want someone not to have their smoke detectors in the remainder of the unit, but there could be something minor like a screen on the back of the other side of the house, upstairs, far away.
Mhm.
Would that fail the kitchenette portion? Is that what you're thinking? And how would you
Well, I think
view
this,
that, something like
this is
that?
a new question. So if I'm trying to understand what you're saying, so we have some people who want to rent rooms out in their house,
Mhm.
right? So it's not a separate unit like a duplex, right? But it's in the house. So in that particular situation, would you review the entire house or just the room or the areas of the house that the short-term rental would have access to?
Ideally, just be the areas of the house that the renter would have access to.
Okay.
Their dwelling unit, the shared kitchen, shared bathroom, entryway, any common areas.
Okay.
But I wouldn't inspect the non-rented out bedroom.
Okay, so if this were a separate unit, then you would inspect that separate unit,
Correct.
including in-law units, and
Yes.
it wouldn't have to be a defined duplex as long as it met minimum entry and exit standards and window size standards for that unit.
Bedroom size standards, yeah.
Bedroom, we have to have some way of getting out of the bedroom, I think. Maybe that's a building code. Okay, so that clarifies for me that we're not picking apart the entire building. Unless, of course, they're common areas common to usage. That is, the person renting would be using that is common space.
Correct. Or
That answers my basic questions.
I would say, or if it was a condition deemed to endanger that we noticed, but yeah.
Yeah, if smoke detectors weren't working in the bedroom for the main unit and they were renting out another bedroom to a tenant, to someone overnight,
Exactly.
we want all the smoke detectors to work for the whole house. When you said 30 days to cure, that always, oh my gosh, what does that mean? It means you have to fix it. Okay. So that's why it raised the question in my mind.
Okay, great. So one of the things that we have been talking about, there's a couple of items that we've been talking about. One is, I think one of the underlying questions of all of this is how do we create a public process for the licensing process? Okay, so for example, Is it a process where they meet all of the, reviews of fire, building inspector, board of health, and they all get checked off, and because they met all those criteria, do they just get the license again? But the challenge with that is, or has been in some of the discussion, is there's no community process by which, let's say this is a rental unit that has been a challenge for some of the residents who abut that particular, short-term rental. Right? And so one of the questions that we've been having is to make this a part of the licensing board. And with the licensing board, they would, the licensing board would essentially collect all of these various, reviews, you know, being certified by all of the various, departments, so that, and when they're all kind of received and approved, it would then go before the licensing board, and then the licensing board would basically have a kind of public process by which people could come in and say, this is a challenge for us, and these are the reasons why, and then the licensing board would make the decision of whether or not they're going to reissue that license for the short-term rental. You have a question?
Yeah, you read the face.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I did, I
Yeah.
did. It wasn't very subtle.
It wasn't very subtle. The question, so the licensing board would review the information presented by the various inspection departments,
Yes.
right? And you're saying who has the question? The question would be raised by a member of the public, or by some complainant, or someone, or by the licensing board themselves. Someone, a member of the board, might ask something about a specific issue that they saw that might be problematic.
It could be, yes.
It's any one of those.
Now, the challenge, here's one more little piece of information.
Before you go on,
Yeah,
just want to make sure I'm getting everything right. So Counselor Kwasinski said license board would review the various licensing processes as one big thing, and then,
inspection processes, yeah.
inspection.
So fire, health,
Mhm.
building inspector.
And then any question raised by the public or by a member of board would be addressed at that time.
Mhm.
And so the licensing board would be the one who basically issues the yearly license.
License. Are we thinking like of a review that is almost like an appeal process to the review of the inspection service?
I don't think we've got
Or-
that far yet.
You know, what I'm driving at is, okay, so the inspection service says, okay, well, now I want to appeal that. So the neighbor or the person or the applicant is now appealing to the licensing.
Well, I think in certain instances, appeals would not go to the licensing board. I think, let's say the fire department said, this is hypothetically, it needs to have sprinklers.
Sure.
And these are the reasons why. They would not appeal to the licensing board. They would
Same with building inspection services. So those appeal processes. Now we're dealing with the neighbor who says something about something.
Yes.
That isn't necessarily an appeal of the information of the inspection.
Yeah, it would be more about like noise, probably parking
Yeah,
operations.
noise.
Nothing.
I'm upset because of noise. Those people weren't quiet. They kept running out. They're having parties and we're supposed to, I called the police.
And I think what we're looking at is like recurring, right? I think there's one location that's had dozens of complaints, right? So, but you, Ryan, you had
Okay,
point you wanted to make.
So looking at other cities, what some of them do are 3 nuisance violations, and either A, you're required to have a hearing, or your short-term rental permits automatically suspended for the next 6 months, or you're unable to renew your short-term rental license the following year. If you have 3 violations within a 6-month period.
What if they're all from the same person?
What do you mean?
So
I
what if
keep
the
complaining
complaints
about
are all
every
from the
neighbor.
same person?
If,
Yeah.
then if a person complains and then the health department goes out and investigates and notices if the violation is valid,
Mhm.
I guess it doesn't matter, just if it's a valid violation. If there's trash all over the property, or the dumpsters aren't covered or something like that,
Mhm.
who would investigate the noise complaint?
the police department.
Do we have a decibel requirement?
No.
I would think that you'd want something objective, if it's possible to ascertain. If not,
What about quiet hours that are
I'd have to ask the sheriff.
Mm-hmm. So after a certain,
morning
of
to
time.
night? Yeah, because I have quiet hours at my place.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
And
think
so-
that's important.
Yeah, it is.
What about an occupancy limit?
Well, that's already set
Okay.
in this as well. They can't have more than 5.
Within 5 for how much space? I put 5 people in the bedroom.
Yeah, no, that's.
I
not-
rent out my bedroom and there's 5 in there. I know there, we don't have 6.
I see, is it a limit of like 2 per bedroom?
It's a limit of 5 people
Okay,
in the house,
Right.
yeah. Because otherwise, if you get to 6, then you're talking about sprinklers and all sorts of things like that.
So we have one limit of 5 for the house, but
7 bedrooms.
if it's a 1-bedroom apartment that's being rented out,
that
I
says.
guess that'd be more of a health department concern. They want to meet the minimum requirement of space.
Is there a minimum bedroom for the health department, number of occupants? per-
There's a minimum required of
square footage?
space. I think it's 100 for the first person and then 70 for each additional person. So if it was 5 people, it'd have to be a pretty big bedroom.
5 would be 350, 450 for square feet for a bedroom. That is a good size bedroom. Boy, that'd be a heck of a. Do we feel a need to have something to do with, is there a reason to have further limitations? Other than 5? I'm just throwing that out. I'm not having a feeling one way or the other. I just, we should think about that.
I just think it's challenging because you can end up with like a large, more popular tourist destinations, for example, will often put like double bunk beds in a room and then you've got 4 people in 1 bedroom. But that's pretty normal because 4 kids in bunk beds versus 4 adults. I just think it's hard to account for every situation reasonably and fairly.
Those are good points.
I also think that the different short-term rental companies that are online, like the Airbnb, I think they have really specifications as to what they have to meet to be able to rent it as a bedroom.
It's true.
So going back to the licensing board, the challenge with having it with the licensing board is that may create a significant workload whereby the city would have to hire somebody to kind of manage that process. Which is part of reaching out to Brian and talking about the Board of Health, because we, as a city, obviously, there's been some questions of budgets, people's hours, so trying to think about equity. So is this something then that instead of the licensing board would manage, that the Board of Health would manage. But again, it becomes a question then of, in talking to Ryan, how would they make that process within the Board of Health a public process, right? And so we keep kind of running into this challenge of how to make the process of licensing and approving the short-term rentals, and giving them their certificate of business or whatever that is to occupy that.
Is there further limitation as to the number of licenses within the proposed?
So there's 50 at a cap.
50.
Yep. Except every year it would go up, I think 2%, I think we said.
Right, that's what I vaguely
10%.
recall, that it goes up, and that it started pretty high if you're not going to be able to fund the inspections and the licensing through the license fees fully. And if it's fully funded by the fee, and 50 people want to pay the fee, and they can collect the rent that support all of that, plus make a profit on the rental of the unit. Okay, great. If it doesn't, then how do you support it? Thank you for answers. Yeah.
Well, it's not only, if I may, it's not only a question of, because I was talking about this with one of my staff members of like, okay, well, track your hours and see how many hours you're putting into this, and we know your hourly rate, and we'll multiply it, and that's like the cost of one application, for example.
Mhm.
But the city's costs are still more because you've got the health insurance and the retirement benefits and what have you. So if it's not able to be absorbed by an existing position, it still does add more cost onto the city. Even if the fee
What if you
covers
tack
their
on-
hourly.
Because they say it covers their hourly, and they tack on
Yeah, you'd have to
10 to 15% for
fringe.
other
Yeah, the
other
fringe
costs that the
benefits.
city has.
Yeah,
That doesn't reflect in the hourly pay to the
Yeah.
employee.
that's, I mean, ultimately, that's what would have to happen.
Now, that number, give me an estimate, that number?
It totally depends on the employee and what they're being. paid.
Yeah, right. So then you say, okay, well, I don't want to have a fee on a project that becomes exorbitant, even if it does support the process. But if you're going to calculate everyone's inspections
Yeah, that's
now, and the licensing board or the Board of Health time for the appeal process or for the process, making it unaffordable. We want to support this. We want to do something that helps us be part of the process, brings people to Easthampton, and
And I don't know if this is something, and I'll go back and talk to Lindsay about this, like, is this something that the licensing board, we would have to get a position, we wouldn't get a position immediately, right? We would kind of start that process, and then recognize, understand more in detail the amount of work, that would be needed, because it would be just, I think we would try to do this process in the January, February kind of months, because that's the low season, so to speak, of the short-term rentals. So to be able to, so it would just be kind of really concentrated in one particular period of time. So that's something to kind of consider and to
as this all rolls out, I like the idea of staging it early in the season. As it rolls out, I'm thinking, do we have reason to believe that 50 spaces will fill up right away? 50, there's 50 hidden spaces already running that we don't know about. All of those questions start to go through my mind. Or is it such that you know, 10, 12, 15, 20, 25, whatever, another number, some other number might be.
So right now we have over 40 that are, I don't want to say licensed, but they are known entities in the city that are operating. And they've continued to be able to operate because there's a moratorium on the
Restrictions or
but being able to kind of operate
Yeah.
until we kind of work through this process. So it gave people the opportunity to continue to run their short-term rental.
So it was brought to our attention at the last meeting that I think it was like 47 or something was what came up in all of the listings, but some of those are duplicates. So a person might have a 2-bedroom unit, but they listed as a 2-bedroom and a 1-bedroom
Sure.
at different prices, depending on
bring me
person's
one
need.
bedroom.
Yeah, you can either
We'll
use
rent
one
it
or you
out,
can
yeah.
use 2, and we, it
Makes
costs
sense.
more. So they're not, it wouldn't necessarily be 47 separate inspections. I don't know how many of those are duplicates.
And another piece, so we could for now keep it with the licensing board. And then as we move forward, we can figure it out if it's something that actually, given everything that's happening, it does make sense that it's with
It definitely makes sense.
yeah, with the Board of Health. So
Yeah, my only concern would be, I don't know if we could do 50 hearings a year.
Mhm.
But if we did something like, if we only had hearings for the problem properties, or if
That was our thought initially, was the registration.
out and schedule a hearing if they wanted to.
Mhm.
I think we could definitely do that as far as the health department.
Mhm. Your thoughts?
Don't necessarily have an issue with notifying the abutters. I don't think a hearing should be like at the abutters' discretion.
Okay.
I think a hearing, if an abutter complains, makes sense, but like, I don't think one rental should be subjected to a public hearing preemptively
Mhm.
just because their neighbor is a little more cautious than others. Because there's a cost to it too. We have to, ask on the paper, it's expensive. And
So in theory, if we were to do it through the Board of Health, then we could say, well, could we say it's on? If there's 50, we do over the course of 2 months, we do 10 over the course, well, actually it'd have to be more than that. So I don't know what the number is that could be done, but we announce that there's going to be this listing of short-term rentals that the hearing is going to be for, and then perhaps nobody shows up.
I guess just what would be the content of the hearing though? Like what would be discussed? If it's like just for the registration, for example, and they haven't even started operating.
This would just be a review of the application, and
Yeah.
if any public residents have any complaints.
Yeah. And then, or if it's a renewal, it's just everything has been collected and we're going to give you the ability to operate. And nobody comes to make a complaint except for, my short-term rental people showed up and there was like 5 people who wanted to complain about it because there was the notice that mine was going to be one of those that are reviewed. Is that how we're thinking that might, is that how that might work for you all if you could do them?
I wouldn't want to do a hearing unless anyone requested it. So I don't see a point in it if no one's requesting the hearing. I could just review the application, issue the permit like I do for food establishments or any other permits we do on behalf of the Board of Health, unless a hearing is requested, or if we'd said if there were 3 violations in the past set amount of time, you're automatically required to have a hearing to address those violations, and then the board has the authority to suspend, revoke, or not permit you in the future.
Mhm.
If we set some type of limitation on it, like I know if there's like, a tobacco violation, it's an automatic suspension, fine.
Mhm.
So if we had 3 supported violations in the past a certain number of time, automatic 6-month suspension or automatically unable to renew in the following year. And then that we could have a hearing for. We'd probably have to.
And how would complaints be registered if it was for, there's too much traffic here, or just like, this is bothering me as a neighbor? Would it have to be a registered complaint with the police department?
It would just have to be in writing.
Okay, so
And-
to the
and-
city?
And followed up on and supported, like
Okay.
like I'm just thinking it would be a nuisance complaint, loose trash everywhere,
Okay,
or no hot water if one of the short-term rent tenants complained,
mhm,
something like that. That we would investigate and support.
okay,
I don't think it could be an unsupported complaint from an angry neighbor.
okay.
So now a question for you, does this sound like it captures the spirit of what we were hoping to accomplish with that process? Or could the licensing board do the same type of process, and what makes more sense?
I think either could do it. I mean, in speaking with the building commissioner, I know there was a thought of he's used to working with the other departments to manage permits going through. So I think the administrative side of it, it's like there's options there. It's more just the venue for the public complaint component of it.
I think it makes sense for the Board of Health because we already handle housing complaints. So I think if a short-term renter has a complaint, they'd call us anyways in regards to, any sanitary housing complaints they would have. So I think we'd be more than able to do it and then work with fire and building to ensure that they have no violations as well.
Ideally, we'd be able to use like the online.
Ideally, if like we have permanentized, it's common in the future.
It just makes it easier to track everything.
You have a question?
Process.
Ah,
No question yet.
okay.
You may jump up any moment.
Don't jump too high.
Good point.
Okay, so that's an option. Do other people have thoughts about that? Are people leaning one way or the other of where it might sit?
I think Ryan made a good case about they already handle housing complaints, so this is around the same.
Is the question,
Mm-hmm.
is there since it's a public process and we're taking issues with the public, the licensing board and the Board of Health are governed, licensing is governed by, Board of Health is governed by the Health Department.
By the board
Staff.
members, by the board
The
members,
the staff is governed by
the board members.
the board members on the Board of Health, a 3-person committee in the city, whereas the licensing board formulation.
It's out of the mayor's office. So Lindsay manages that in the city.
Right, and we
there's-
appoint
There's people
people to the
appointed.
licensing board. I think there's 3
There's 3.
appointments, if I'm not mistaken. And I just wonder if, from the public's perspective about making complaints, I see the Board of Health's work as somewhat independent from the council and the mayor's office, in that you're governed by state law with your current and the state regulations. And so there's a different governing structure. And I wonder if that removes, except for appointment of board members, the council and the mayor kind of out of that public process and puts it on a 3-member board. Am I making any sense? It's
So-
a
so-
sense of,
somewhat,
I think they're both pretty autonomous.
but I think with, as far as this, it would just be a city ordinance. So it wouldn't be, a state regulation, a state health regulation or anything like that.
But the licensing board also follows state regulation, if
Right.
that was what you were getting at.
I just wanted to be able to draw out in my mind who the reporting parties are and who you report to. You were essentially, you don't report to us, you report to
The board, the health
Board of
department, the board, yes.
Yeah. The licensing board, on the other hand, isn't as clear cut as Board of Health has its own independent body, its own rules, its own restrictions. And frankly, we don't, we probably don't really want to be involved and mess in that, because that's work that's done by codes
Mhm.
and your inspection services, and it shouldn't be a political process. Whereas, is there a difference in type of what we're talking here that makes it more political process and somewhat more of a political process as opposed to a technical, you didn't meet standard, this standard. Throwing that out, just, we should be thinking about something like that and say we covered it.
So if the only complaint against them has nothing to do with licenses, but instead of neighborhood complaint, where the neighbors are just saying this is too loud and this and that, are you saying that who is elected to the Board of Health
There's
would be a
no,
political process?
there's
And,
no election to the board.
okay.
The public only has elective authority over us,
Mhm.
counselors and the mayor, not the Board of Health.
But the Board of Health is screened through our appointments process.
True.
So,
As is the
As
licensing
is the
board.
licensing. So
right.
they have it takes a long time
Mhm.
to be able to respond to that. It could be longer than the political process. And that's something just to be aware of as you consider the nature of the type of complaints and what the public is going to expect.
Just trying to make sure I got everything. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding your points right.
Please ask questions.
All right. Are you trying to make an argument for why the Board of Health would not be as good as the licensing board or vice
I'm
versa?
making the point that yes, there is a different governing body who
Mhm.
is responsible for the work of the Board of Health. Folks don't call us if there's a complaint with the decision-making process or a complaint that's really here. Whereas with the licensing board, I think there is a role for public to expect their counselors to be responsive and the mayor to be more responsive to issues. And maybe I'm mistaken, but
I don't know that I would. I think if there is an issue with a short-term rental, regardless, in my thinking, regardless if it's with the Board of Health or with the licensing board, they're gonna come to a city councilor and say, I have a real issue with this particular thing, and then we
The
would
city
just have to
council goes to the
say,
health department,
it's
exactly.
going to go to the health
Health
department.
department,
The
or
health
you gotta go to the
department's gonna turn
licensing
around and say, well, with a violation with, let's say, a restaurant.
Hmm.
It's really not our role, in my opinion, to be exercising any influence over the Board of Health's decisions. You're the independent body making that decision. And it really is the Board of Health's decision to shut down the restaurant, to fine the restaurant, to make a standard that there's been a fire and they have to clean up after the fire and they have to throw away all their inventory. Oh, geez, that's going to cost us, and you're going to have to do this or do that. That's not, I don't see that as being I see that as a good separation of powers and authority. Board of Health's decision, their standards. Here,
But if I'm sorry, I'm interjecting, sorry.
please do.
But I would think that someone might come to me
Yeah.
with a complaint and I would just go to Ryan and say, hey, just a heads up, I'm getting a complaint. I think that's just a courtesy that.
Well, and
Similar to
I wouldn't
that,
Intervene or
Yes,
insert
I
myself
wouldn't-
into
yeah, I
that.
wouldn't
Just like
think
I
we
wouldn't
would-
intervene or insert myself in the licensing board either. I would just say.
I
heads
don't
up,
think it's the same standard with the licensing board as it is when it comes to the standards for this type of work that
Mhm.
we're talking about, assigning to the licensing board. If it has to do with state regulations and liquor licenses, or no, I don't think.
but I just feel like, we're already doing that as far as housing, and this would follow more under the minimum standards of fitness for a housing or short-term rental. And we already can go and we're able to condemn a house that we find unfit or a danger or something.
You should push us for noise complaints.
I don't want noise complaints. I don't want,
I mean, noise standards.
who enforces it and how? Exactly.
Yeah.
With my decimal meter?
Yeah.
No.
Nope, they're good.
Reminds me of the light, like the candle.
I don't necessarily have a
Oh,
problem with the Board of Health. I just wanted to address that. I think we talked
I think it can become political either way. It really depends. I've just in my experiences,
And I
shutting down a restaurant could be very, very political.
And I think in most cities that I've looked at, it's 50-50 between who is enforcing the short-term rentals. Is it the health department, is it the Board of Health, or is it the licensing department?
about it.
Or Board of Selectmen, or building, yeah. So it could be either.
Other thoughts about this? So you're not advocating one way or the other, whether
I
or
am
not
not
the guys.
advocating. I
You're
am
just asking the
playing
question.
devil's advocate. Asking the question.
Do you have thoughts about or preference or concerns, either or?
Well, I think from the cost containment standpoint of having, if I'm understanding, Ryan, you're saying you do have the time available to be able to do this, right?
Or
We
it
have-
fits within your purview as
We have
well?
the time and we have the staff to be able to do this, yes.
Okay. Whereas.
As
the
long as it's
license-
not, if not, as long as we're not doing 50 hearings,
Mhm,
we still have to figure out that part. But
yeah,
yeah, if we were only doing the hearings for the problem properties or a certain number of hearings every year, yeah, we could do that for sure.
okay. Because I think that falls into part of the rationalization for why we're choosing this as a route.
Mhm.
Like, we're also looking at what's the most cost-effective route, and this would be it versus hiring someone new to be the inspector for all of these things. So I think that's an important part
I
of,
think that's very important.
yeah, I do too.
Yep.
So,
Great, so we'll have to make that change. The other piece of this puzzle is within the amount of time that a rental is the number of days that a short-term rental is able to operate. So in a conversation with the building inspector, now I'm forgetting it's 1 in 3, hang on a second. If it's less than 50% of the year, minus 1 day, yeah, so plus 50%, they would, that's not what I want to say. If
It's more than.
well, I want to start with less than. I want to start with less than. But yes, to make it super simple, super simple, more than 50% of the year, the short-term rental is in operation, they would have to have a sprinkler system, right? If it's less than 50%, minus 1, technically, they still would have to have a sprinkler system, but there is more discretion on the part of the building inspector to find or be open to alternative ways of kind of suppressing fire, right? So let's say hypothetically, there's easy exit, either through a door or a window, etc. Or let's say there's kind of fire suppressing canisters underneath the stovetop, which is where most fires in short-term rentals occurs, in the kitchen. Those may be mitigating factors that would support the building inspector's decision to not require a sprinkler system within the structure, within the short-term rental. So we would have to decide what do we want the cap to be. So hypothetically, and I'm not agreeing or disagreeing, I'm just saying this as a understanding. Let's say hypothetically, right now we have it at less than 50%, but if we were to raise that, or we've been talking about less than 50%, if we were to raise that to, let's say, 250 days that a short-term rental could operate, and I have a short-term rental that I was thinking ahead years ago, and I put a sprinkler system into my duplex other place in anticipation that someday I might be able to have a short-term rental in, then that allows me to be able to, in fact, have a short-term rental that operates and functions for 250 days, right? But I also have well, I'm not going to use me. Counselor Smith has a duplex that does not sadly have a sprinkler system in there, but she would opt to do the less than half the year minus 1 day process, right? And so that's, I think, kind of where we are in terms of deciding what the minimum day is that we would want to have by permit that they could actually operate.
Max.
Or the maximum, I'm sorry, the maximum.
Sorry, I got.
But yeah, so we would have to decide the maximum number of days. And that maximum could still be
Unlimited,
50%.
but it could be unlimited, or it could be dual.
Well, we would just have to pick the date, the day, the number of days, and then in their process with the city, they would have to, in their conversations with the building inspector, et cetera, they would say, I know I can have 250 days, but I'm only going to do 50% minus 1 day because I don't have a sprinkler system. So it would open it up for people to opt into whichever one suited them best.
And we don't want to codify. What I'm saying is have two standards.
No, I think it's just, it would be 250 and it's your choice if you put the sprinkler in and do the 250, or you don't do the sprinkler and you do 160. 40, whatever.
How did we come up with 250?
It's just a random number. Right now, I
Why
think
couldn't it be 360?
it could. So right now, the way it's written is that if it's their principal residence, they can rent it for an unlimited number of days per year. So that means they live there and rent it while they're living there.
Yeah.
If they don't, it's written as 200 days.
But in conversation, we learned that it would be less than. So that was kind of a clarification, but that it could be 200, right? And if it's 200, they have to have the sprinkler system if that's what they want to function as. Or that number could go up because in theory, limiting the number of people, or we're limiting the number, or people are limited, we're not limiting, people are limited by the number of days that they can rent, then because we don't have other means in the city of hotels and things like that, and we're capping it at 50, it might reduce the number of people who could stay in Easthampton because I can't go to the same place that I used to because now they're limited by the number of days that they can have a short-term rental.
And when we're saying short-term rental, are we saying that it's defined by you can rent from January through June, or are we saying 180 days
Throughout the course of the,
throughout the course of 365 days?
Yeah, you pick which days, as long as it doesn't
You pick
add up,
which
as long as
days.
it doesn't add up to more than 200.
Right, how do we enforce that? How do we do it? What are the controls for that?
well, I think
It
those
sounds
are,
like a reasonable plan. I would rather have more days on available. People come and repeat, you know, I want to go now and I want to go in 6 months and I want to go 3 months after that. Stay.
well, I think the rationale for limiting the number of days is that we have a housing crisis. And if I have a short-term rental and I decide, you know what, I don't want to deal with a long-term rental, so I'm just going to short-term rental it out or short-term rent it out, then that means I'm taking my long-term rental off the market, and that then has an impact potentially on affordability, because if we have a limited number of long-term housing, then that's going to make rents go up, you know, et cetera. And so I think the idea is we are trying to create an opportunity for a service within the city, without endangering the affordability or impacting, not endangering, impacting the or contributing to the increasing values of rents and things like that. So I think that's the balance that we're trying to find of, do people want to have a short-term rental and figure out what that profit margin is, or do they want to have a long-term rental because then that's not something that they have to track, they don't have to worry about sprinklers potentially, all of those various things that go into that. But the underlying premise of that, I think, is we're trying to find the balance between making sure that we're not carving too deeply into long-term housing and affordability.
Going back to that, I'm sorry, you go.
I was just gonna say, some of the context is that we also had previous meetings where people who were looking for housing in Easthampton were very vocal that it's not fair that we can't keep our kid in the school district here because our rental is, we just don't have enough rentals in the area, and like, here is a spot where we could have, and they're choosing instead to do the lower amount of days at a much higher rate versus a fair market value for a rental over the long run. So that was part of that conversation, was just too many days could create a real, you see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
and what I'm trying to understand is, imagining myself in the rental business of short-term rentals, and how would I handle this if I had a bedroom, if I had 2 bedrooms, if I had an in-law apartment, a kitchenette, a studio, or a separate duplex type situation. And how would each person, how would they kind of play it out in their mind? Well, if it's a one bedroom, it really shouldn't affect the rental market that much. If somebody's renting a bedroom in their home, 2 bedrooms, say, it shouldn't take that unit off, that apartment, their own residence, off the market. So they would, if anyone who had that situation, wouldn't affect.
Right, and the way it's
Rental
written,
market.
they have unlimited.
And they have unlimited. How do we know how many of the 50 are in that situation and how many are in the situation of something else, something that could be defined as a rental unit that would have 30 days or, rent
I don't
on a
think that
monthly basis, let's say.
we haven't got that data in terms of who's gonna be impacted, because in reality, the 50 people, at this point it's 50, the 50 people who got the license to do this, they could all be that situation.
Change.
So it
So
may
it-
not affect the rental market at all. Keep someone out of the schools or a very small number of people. We were assuming that if you did this, you would be taking 50 units off the market, and that would have an impact on rental prices for your monthly rentals.
I think it could still have an impact. That was just one example, I think, in regards to apartments, but there's college students who rent rooms in houses and things like that. So I think that those are all, and I think when you look at the rental cost in Amherst, I think there's more and more students who are looking beyond Amherst to be able to find housing, right? So in theory, that could be, right? It could have an impact.
Could have an impact. So,
Some of it's turnover. The unit that triggered this is a whole house.
Mhm.
The folks that own it don't live in the state even, but it's their family home from generations and that they have chosen to short-term rental it. Just, I don't know their logic per se, but that is a unit that the whole house lost. And so there's more money to be made the more days of the year you can rent it and the more incentive, I guess, to do that.
Yeah, because in some instances, I read somewhere and I don't remember where, I think a short-term rental, at 10 days covers your cost of overhead for that. And anything over 10 days is just,
for what, for the year, for the month?
yeah, for the month.
For the
right?
month, okay.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
that's in for the
Sorry,
year.
sorry, no, no, no.
Okay,
So
sounds
10
like
days
a
for the month.
interesting
Apply for the
business.
short-term
Should-
rental
should
permits.
look into this.
Yeah, so if I'm, renting it, right,
Yeah,
unlimited, then obviously why would I rent it long-term? Because I'm making more money
Yeah.
doing this, right? But the long-term impact on the city is that people are, because they can't, that they maybe lost their housing for whatever. I mean, there's renter rights and things like that. They could just maybe happen, but people might be pushed out. The other thing I think that as I'm kind of talking, I'm thinking about this out loud. That also kind of feels like a small number of people in the city now are in a position of deciding who gets to stay in Easthampton. Because then it becomes people who can afford to stay in those short-term rentals as opposed to someone who's, trying to live affordably in Easthampton. But you had a comment, so wanna,
Just going back, if there's a limit on how many days they can rent out their short-term rental, how would we enforce that?
so I think that I think they have to provide that information, but it's also all tracked because they're in Airbnb or, whatever those online things, so that's how those particular things are tracked.
let me bring up a naturally occurring thought to city officials. And you may have discussed this, but we just came from the Cape and we spent a week and, it's X number of dollars for the rental and in the community. God, like $250 a week. They help us. Increase police, increase fire, increase this, increase inspections, yada, 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 yada. Is there such a funding this? Is there an implication for the city?
We do have a rooms tax already, but I think there's an additional tax that could be adopted.
How would that play out? Because that tracking, you would track this through the collections, and the collections, I imagine.
It goes to the Department of Revenue first.
Goes to
and
the
then comes to
DOR,
us.
and then so then the DOR has the data, and they have the money, and we've adopted it, and the state may or may not keep its portion and your portion. for to cover the costs of this. Just bringing that up to consider because it isn't free, but you want to make it reasonable.
I think that's part of the rationale of increasing it 10% each year of opening up. That's more revenue for the city. And so we're giving it a go with 50. And then the following year, we might up it by 10%. And then the next year up it by 10%. But that's something that is in here, right? But that might be something that the council says, ooh, our long-term rental
It's having an impact.
is
on
having a
long-term
huge impact.
rentals.
We're seeing our rentals go up significantly. You know, is this having an impact? And then we may have to revisit that, right? But as of right now, that is a means of generating some revenue for that. But did you want to say something?
Just that we have the rooms tax that was already adopted. There's also, the state has provided the option for communities to adopt a community impact fee up to 3%. If an operator has more than one property in the locality, or is renting an owner occupied 2 or 3 family house on a short-term rental basis. So there's a number of like qualifiers for whether the impact fee would apply or not, but it's something that the cities can adopt. But another point of, are there ways to offset impacts? There is that.
Could we track for a year to see how much, if we are having, like, if you're having to do overtime for someone in your department, if it turns out that it is costing us extra money, then we consider the community impact fee. I'm concerned that if that's going to the renter, I can understand if it's in like in a vacation town that's having a lot more toilets being used during the summertime and a lot more garbage in their parks and a lot, because it's a tourist area out in Cape Cod.
Yeah.
Here, I don't know if it would be the volume that would justify that kind of a cost. I just honestly don't know if this is going to be a much bigger project than what we're envisioning, or if it would be contained within that.
We do have Mount Tom's ice cream though, so.
How do other communities handle it?
I think there's a mix. Some communities have, oh, I don't know about that particular fee, but in terms of the days, they're, some of them have the 50%, the max is at the kind of 50% mark, and then some of them have more than that. But we would have to look into at whether or not other cities have adopted the 3% and stuff like that. But I think Councillor Smith makes a good point. Are we the types of city that are gonna have, you know, increase the usage of things like that? But
Of what?
Calls for service, public,
yeah,
municipal impacts to municipal operations.
would there be, are we the type of city or type of short-term rental community that would, you know, increase that?
Yeah.
And then just the other end of it, a lot of communities have a minimum time of a rental duration.
Oh, like each rental period has to be 5 days or something.
No, renting for an hourly rate or renting for duration fewer than 10 consecutive hours.
Oh,
Would
yeah,
it
we
be-
have that in here. Yeah,
Just making sure.
yeah.
I just need it for an hour.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That was-
Anyways.
That was a given. That we
Just
had
making
that.
sure we got it.
Other questions?
Oh, but sounds like you've been doing a lot of work. It is very complicated. Yes.
There's been lots of
Very
conversations.
complicated.
So back to the number of days, are we good with 200? Do we want to say 250? Do we want, like, how are people feeling? I mean, I feel like my thoughts have changed a little bit since I've known that the the only being allowed for 50% of the time is that, just because we don't have hotels and stuff like that, but I'm open to other people's thoughts.
I do think the sprinklers are gonna be pretty self-limiting.
Yeah, I do too.
So it'd be self-limiting to new construction.
Well,
At
new
some point.
construction,
Just if the number of people that are going to install the sprinklers to have that greater number of years is probably gonna be few and far between.
greater number of days.
Greater number of days, yeah. So if it self-limits, it self-limits. If we're tracking it through the state wire, worry about tracking. Okay. I'm happy with a higher amount. I'm comfortable with that. Just initially. I think it gives flexibility. Does it give flexibility to absentee landowner? Is that who we're giving flexibility to? To those who don't live here, who have no responsibility necessarily to the city, but may get, geez, I'm gonna buy a bunch of places and do this because it's profitable.
Well, we have a limit on that, so,
Okay?
Lots of layers to this.
yeah, so there's a limit on,
Number of unit, number of,
yeah, the number of units that you can have that you do short-term rental, as well as to deter people from
getting in there.
getting in and buying, like, I'm gonna buy this house in Easthampton and run it, so they have to wait a year before they can short-term rent it as well, so.
I guess my only concern is if they rent it on Airbnb for the number of days, what's gonna stop them? How do we enforce if they go on Facebook and rent it person to person or by word of mouth for the rest of the other days of the year?
I haven't thought that through.
That'd be my concern because they probably try and get as much money as they could,
Mhm.
and I just don't know how we'd enforce that.
Yeah, I mean, it's written in here that they have to retain their records for a certain amount of time and provide them to the city
Yeah.
if requested. Obviously, whether or not they're
Record.
truthful is another story, but you kind of run into that anyways, where somebody could just like not tell the city at all.
Mhm.
Or, you know,
That's
it's-
true.
It's an enforcement challenge one way or the other, I think.
That's true.
Just for the record, I'm not gonna go stand outside short-term rental daily and.
Well, I just don't want you thinking the health department's gonna be knocking on doors.
You're not gonna get it.
Day 199 check.
So, do people have thoughts about the number of days?
I will say one of the controls I saw in operation at the state, at the Cape, was a certificate that's issued by the owner that says, okay, here, you are renting this to, I'm renting this unit to this person for this number of people for this period of time. And it's very specific and it must supposed to be posted in the unit. And anyone from any governmental agency has the right to come in and look at it and say, well, who are you? Who are you? Who are you? You know, your name, I don't see your, you know, oh, the dates on this were for last week. Who are you guys? What are you doing here? Well, oh, we just rented. So it's, and then you start to get into that level of possible enforcement. And that's why I'm saying, because the state gets wind of that and they might send DOR. So people might be more might be more accountable in their minds that, gee, I really don't want the DOR coming in, checking on my business. So it's run pretty much, I know my person we rent from is very.
I was gonna say, I think the short-term rental owners operators are probably more concerned about who's in the unit than the
Mhm.
city is. And it being who they intended it to be. So
Yeah.
I don't know that, yeah, that feels like a lot.
I feel like that could be an easy route to harassment.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting we get involved in that business, but I'm just.
Mhm.
pointing that out.
Right.
It's like
All right.
Girl Scout camp.
Well,
Girl Scout camp. Who's in this cabin?
All right, so we'll rework this, we'll build in the Board of Health. Think about the number of days,
Do you want me to will that provision or leave it for a minute?
the number of days. I'm thinking 250, like, I think it's less, still 3/4 of the day, and for anyone who has the ability to be able to do that, it still allows the city or to be able to offer a service to people who are gonna be, coming, because this is gonna limit people, right? Based on, I mean, the sprinklers alone, I think is gonna have an impact on people's ability to.
Can I ask a question? Because I live in the house and I rent one full unit, do I need sprinklers in that unit even though I live there?
So when you say unit, is it like a duplex?
It's a two-family, it's a top floor, I live on the first floor and I rent the upstairs. I'm like staircase away.
I mean, I guess I would have to ask the building, but, I mean, is it like easy access, like?
Oh yeah, they have their own, we have a common entry
Uh-huh.
and then we each have our own exit doors, front door. So they have their own front door.
So that feels like a separate unit then, right? So, yeah, I think it would be the same. Half I would think that you would have to have a sprinkler system.
'Cause I thought they were saying if the person lived in the house, that the sprinkler systems weren't necessary.
What defines a house? If there's two different, units, are those two different houses or is it one? If it's one house?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a question for the building inspector, but the way that I'm understanding, if they feel like two separate, did they have like when they go in the common entry, then they go up the stairs? Is there like a door that like they lock and are able to, or is it just, they're just up on the second floor landing and that's where they live and you can?
No, there's a common entry door, so you enter
Yeah.
the side hall. My unit is right on the first floor, so I have my own door.
Yeah.
They go up a set of stairs and then they have their own door.
Yeah, so that feels like two separate.
Dwelling units?
I don't know if, even if that weren't the case, I don't know. I think David would have to weigh in on whether or not the owner occupying the unit has any bearing on the sprinklers.
Yeah.
Or I really don't know.
Yeah. So I'm just saying it feels like, but I think that, the building inspector would have to look at that. Okay. When he's inspecting. And I see John has his hand up.
Hey, guys. I just had a quick question about the sprinklers because it's changed a lot since I was at a meeting. So I'm understanding that you're trying to say that if you rent less than 50% of the time, you don't need them. And if you rent more than 50%, you need them. And also you're holding the whole general occupancy to 5 because nobody has them. Is that correct?
So in terms of the sprinklers, if it's a short-term rental, technically you are required to have a sprinkler, regardless if it's whether half the year you have it or whether or not it's full-time. But the building inspector and working with the fire department in their inspection, if they are able to see that there is easy access to exit in case of an emergency, or there are other fire suppression, uh, items in the rental unit, then maybe, and I'm not saying they are, maybe there is an opportunity for them to see an alternative to a sprinkler system that would be permissible to permit the short-term rental.
Okay, great. So because of what I do for a living, I'm working on the same kind of projects, in a different city, but I'm also working with the state. And I have spoken with the state building inspector as well in depth about this. And as far as I know, there isn't one short-term rental in Massachusetts yet that has sprinklers, and they're still really trying to figure that whole thing out on a state level.
Yep.
So I'm not sure if we really have the jurisdiction to write rules into this ordinance that even pertain to sprinklers in this way. I'm just putting that out there for you to research. But then my other question is, if I just decide to put sprinklers in my rental because I've already gotten a quote and I want to just forego all of this, so then that means that I would get to then rent more than 50% of the time and have more than 5 people?
Yeah, I think that you would have to speak to the building inspector about that, but if I remember correctly, it's 6 or more, right? You were required to have sprinklers.
Yes.
That would allow you to rent more. But in terms of your comment regarding writing rules into this, we have no rules written into this regarding sprinklers. What we have said is that they have to follow fire code, and codes of the Board of Health and the building inspector and things like that. And as of right now, that is what the rules are. That is what the codes say. So that's what we have been told. I understand that there are some cities that perhaps have their own way of approval. But this is how our building inspector has explained this to us.
Okay.
Yeah, so we don't have any rules. We're just saying follow the rules that is set by the state, and the state is, this is what the rules right now, as of today, are.
Process. I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thanks, John.
Understands the rules of the process. We're only talking about the rules
Mhm.
here, and we could vote on it, and then it has to go to city council.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that probably should be explained. I wouldn't want
Yeah, so the ordinance that we're, right, the general ordinance that we're writing, right, is something that this committee will discuss, and we've had lots of input from the various department heads, and they're providing guidance. And so once we put an ordinance together, right? These are our recommendations that we would send back to city council. And then council would then vote on whether or not they wanted to adopt this. Right,
So until then, we have anything that we've generated, we haven't generated
well, we just have generated the draft.
the draft, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
The city attorney has looked at it.
And the city attorney has weighed in on that. But again, we haven't written any rules in here other than they must follow this state regulation, right? So,
I can understand the question coming from him just because he's
Yep.
one of the residents that has more than
Oh,
Like he has
absolutely.
room for more than 5 people, so.
Yep.
I can understand needing clarification on that.
Yeah, yeah. And if people are able to do that, more power to you. I think that's part of, a lot of people are not going to be able to afford that. And so I think that that speaks to the raising the 250 days so that we can continue to provide some service to visitors to the community.
And just for the small number of houses we have that are on septic, I would just want to have some type of limit in there for houses that are on septic as far as an occupancy limit.
Mhm.
That it can't go over what it states, how per bedrooms in the property.
We've made no rule on number of occupants per bedroom outside of the code,
So,
right? So if somebody had big bedrooms,
I see what you're saying. Yeah, because
And-
the way the steps work, it's off number of bedrooms. So if they have 3 bedrooms,
right, so that gets you the septic system. I have a 3-bedroom septic system and I have 3 bedrooms.
but
But
if you,
now I'm gonna put 12 people.
You can only have 5. That's you can
Right.
only have 5.
what if they had sprinklers in there?
If they had sprinklers, then they could have 6 or more, but so, yeah, okay, so I
Well,
understand what you're saying, but.
I mean, I have a relative and we would all go to their place and they had a septic tank, so they would actually rent a porta potty for the weekend while we were all going there.
That seems
So,
like some public health concerns.
And the
And like-
neighbors would probably be really upset by that.
Either-
Well, don't put it within on my lot line.
Yeah, I just
So
think
you 3 can use the bathroom, you 3 have.
yeah, my only concern is if you have a septic system that's designed for a 3-bedroom house and you're renting it out to 15 people, it's gonna overflow, it's gonna back up, it's gonna be a public health concern.
Good point. Good point.
and we
See,
feel-
that's why we want the Board of Health to inspect the.
Yeah. And we feel that the porta potty wouldn't be an acceptable alternative for that.
Unless it was one of those really nice trailer ones they have now with the
Yeah.
water and everything.
Mhm. Other questions? Other questions? So if you're open, maybe you and I could meet to make some changes and then we can bring back a more final, and leaning in that direction of final, draft of this that we can then present to, council, and we'll take in all of the city solicitors' comments and then, yeah, and if there's any other kind of pieces that people want to think about or, so please read it one more time before the next meeting and then we can have a conversation about that.
While we're bringing me up to speed, is there any other timeframes within business for short-term rentals? We have the moratorium. That's not straining us.
Is it October it was good through?
I'm just wondering what the parameters are, if anything, that's constraining us
Yeah, when that
to get
Oh,
approval.
the
enforcement
yeah, I think it's,
memo went out.
uh, I will have to look that up. It might be October.
So, just want to keep that in the back of my mind.
Yeah. Yep, so
Sounds like we're moving along
I just-
nicely.
if people are amenable, like, because I think that we could meet relatively quickly. And if we can meet again before the next city council meeting, to maybe try to have a final kind of draft that we can present back to council, that would be probably really helpful. So are people,
Booked every night between now and the next council meeting,
okay,
unfortunately, with
Um,
meetings. Because we have Labor Day in there too.
right,
So, the second meeting in September.
yeah. Well, here's a
I mean,
question.
I can meet during the day. I just wouldn't be able to attend your
Right. So
meeting.
here's the question, would people be willing to meet at the beginning of the day?
When?
Well, we could try it for next week. like next Thursday, maybe,
31st.
on the 28th.
Oh, sorry, I'm in the wrong month. I do not think I will be in town just because it's my child's birthday.
Yeah. What about the first or, ooh, not the first, what about the second in the morning?
I can't, that's opening day for me. I could uh, if it was first thing in the morning on the 28th, then I could.
Okay.
Like if we're talking like
6:30? Okay.
How long, I mean, I feel like we can turn around the changes pretty.
I think we can change it. I think what I'm more concerned about is
Oh, we have to post.
we have to post it. So we need 2 days to post that. So I'm thinking the 28th is the day that we'd be able to safely be able to 7:30, 7:45.
I, so I'm trying to think of my husband's.
What time?
7:30, 7:45 in the morning,
On Thursday?
the 28th.
At 7:45 is the
Yeah,
best
7:45.
I can do, unfortunately.
7:45, 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock is good.
That, you had a lot of agreement on that one, didn't you? All right.
Now you know what my, now you know what my usual meetings with department heads looks like.
August 20th.
Can you please meet at 7:45? Okay, so we will, I'll set up a meeting with you. And then you can work on those and then do that. The other item, just really, not quickly, but that Counselor Kwasinski brought forward is related to, so that's everything for the short-term rental. So if folks want to leave, they're more than welcome to head out. The other item that we're going to talk about is, bye, thank you, have a good night, was the biosolids that Counselor Kwasinski put forward. Is there any, would you like to introduce this? Would you like to talk about it? Because I know this has been been an item that we've been waiting for a while. Obviously, we've been waiting for an update for people. We were waiting for the Agricultural Commission to weigh in. I think that members of the commission were had varying opinions about the situation. They have declined to do that in part because they are anticipating that the state is going to provide some sort of guidelines for sewage sludge, et cetera. And it's going to be somewhere between Maine and Connecticut, various laws that have been put forward. That was a conversation at the last meeting, and between then and now, Councilor Kwasinski has put forward this ordinance to address that. So would you like to provide some explanation to this, or?
I think you've laid it out nicely. The larger perspective is what we do with our farmlands and with the city. With regard to biosolids. My intent was to put a hold, study the matter. There seems to be held up. We're unable to put the hold on for farmlands readily. What we can do, however, is look at the municipal usage, and we may make a statement to the public regarding our stance and commitment to improved soils, improved not spreading PFOAs onto as much property as we can control readily. And what we control is the properties that are owned by the city, whether they be schools, parks, municipal buildings, raw land that we have, and farmland that's under control of the city. So I don't think there's a great deal of material. We're not talking about restricting lots of material, but we are making a statement to the public that says this is a serious issue. It's being dealt with in the states of Maine and Connecticut. We're on the cutting edge, and we want to make a statement as a community for the city. So that is the statement we would be making, essentially saying there are no biosolid applications on municipal land. That is movement.
Questions, comments?
No, I mean, I don't think it's, I don't think it's likely that we're going to start using it, but I don't oppose having it in writing that we're not gonna start using it, you know? So.
Or
just
whatever
makes-
minimal use that there is, yes.
So, yeah.
Do we want more time to look this over? Do we have comment for this at this time? Are we good with this and we want to send it back to city council? Like,
Do we want to send it on to the attorney for review of the ordinance and just to say, okay, that's the right place for it, that's how the form, the language is good,
Mhm.
let's run with it.
Mhm.
do you want me to read it? Have you?
Yeah, I'm trying to pull it up right now.
So let me read it. So Chapter 8, Article 1, Section 8, Streets, Sidewalks, and Public Grounds. The application or spread of biosolids, which includes both treated and untreated sewage sludge on Easthampton municipal property, is prohibited. It includes sludge generated from a municipal, commercial, or industrial wastewater treatment plant. B, compost material that includes in its production sludge generated from a municipal, commercial, or industrial wastewater treatment plant or septage. Or C, any other product or material that is intended to use as a fertilizer, soil amendment, topsoil replacement, or mulch, or for other similar agricultural purpose that is derived from or contains sludge generated from a municipal, commercial, or industrial wastewater treatment plant or septage.
I would make a motion to approve that and move to the full council and see if we want to move it to the lawyer.
Should we move?
Are those two separate? Would it make sense to see if everyone's in agreement of putting this in first and then seeing if the lawyer wants to do it?
I think we would probably want to send it to the lawyer first and then have it come back to us, and then we would put that recommendation forward to the council, because I think council would vote on more of a final.
Whatever way.
You want to make a motion to send it to the attorney?
Yes, I would. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions, great. Okay, so we will send this to the attorney. So I will reach out to the city council president to ask him to send this on to the attorney. And then hopefully we'll get some feedback on that relatively quickly. And
It may be soon enough to discuss it.
at the next thing, yeah. Great. Anything else that folks want to talk about that's related to?
I saw my first TikTok of sewage being used.
Hmm.
And it was in Europe, and there's a large contingent of campers that will go and, you know, be on someone's farm. And so that's how they were trying to get rid of the squatters on the property. It was just
Oh.
open sewage.
Oh, well,
Because it smelled so bad.
yeah.
So we should have that at the next council as we go to talk about it. It's really hard to
The
imagine, you
pellets,
know.
you're talking about the biosolid pellets that are. used
Yeah,
as-
yeah, like
and
all of that.
fertilizers. They're
Yeah.
obnoxious.
Yeah,
They're obnoxious.
all right.
So I will take a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Great.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.